Hey there, little chatterboxes. You know, I woke up this morning, it's Monday morning, and I thought, you know what, I'm missing something. And I couldn't quite figure out what it was that I was missing. And then it came to me. I have been missing you guys. I've been missing all of your funny things that you say and smiling faces. And just missing you in general because I think all of you are so wonderful. Each and every one of you can do wonderful things. You can think wonderful things and sense wonderful things. And so today I want to talk about some of those things that you and I can sense. We've talked about our five senses quite a bit, right? We see with our eyes, smell with our nose, hear with our ears, taste with our tongues, and we can touch and feel with our hands and our skin, right? So today I want to go on a little walk, a little exploration. And since we can't do it at Chatterbox like we have done, I want to go explore the desert and bring you guys along with me. I think it can be quite fun. And I want to start with our sense of hearing. Because who remembers what our first affirmation was that we had in groups? It was, I am a good listener. I hope you guys remember. So today we're going to start with our sense of sound. We're going to listen closely to things. When we're done with this video and exploring things, I encourage you to go on a little exploration of your own with your parents. And then go out, and I want you guys to find one thing that you found that you used each sense for. So you can take a picture of it or draw a picture of it, write it down, or just tell your parents. But one thing that you see, smell, taste, hear, or feel. So I'm going to start with this exploration now to show you guys kind of how to do it. And then I hope to hear from you guys about your exploration. Let's get going. So, what sound did you guys just hear? It's a sound that if you're just walking around, you probably don't even really think twice about it. But let's name it. Let's start naming sounds that we don't think about very much. That one is a crunching sound. Anybody else have a good word for what it sounds like when you walk on dirt? See, it's different here in the desert when you walk around out in the desert because we don't have very much rain, so we don't get very much grass. So we end up with dust and rocks. And when you walk over dust and rocks, it makes a crunching sound. Now, is it a loud sound? I don't think it's very loud. And that's why we don't necessarily notice it unless you are really thinking about it. But when you start to name all these things and you notice things that you didn't notice before, then you realize the wonderful powers that you actually have. Let's go use another sense.
The world keeps turning our way, and our way is on the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road.
Whoa, what in the heck are those things? Anybody know? Cactus, right? These ones are actually called prickly pear. I wonder why they would call them prickly pear. Well, how do you think they would feel? Prickly, sharp, pointy, right? Now, if we're just using our sense of sight, these are super cool to look at, right? Lots of different parts, interesting colors. Now, one thing that I noticed over here is there's a hole by there. Now, I'm not too keen on sticking around to figure out what's inside that hole. So what I'm gonna do is show you a movie that I did a couple years ago with my son that talks about why these are called prickly pears. And we cannot just use our sense of touch and our sense of sight to describe these things, but also our sense of taste. Check it out. Usually starting in early summer, the prickly pear can start to be found across the New Mexico desert. They add wonderful color to the landscape, they accent our incredible sunsets, and they make for a nice snack. There you go.
This will bleed if you cut it open.
It's gonna bleed? Alright, let's see.
See?
Pretty cool looking.
If you show me this seeds.
Okay, so brave little Johnny Justice is going to try this prickly pear, this red prickly
pear.
So brave little Johnny Justice is going to eat a cactus. And what's it called?
A prickly pear.
A prickly pear. So now I'm going to peel off the skin
So I can eat it.
so he can eat it. There we go. Here's the skin. Here's the fruit. Now there's lots of little seeds in there, so we got to make sure that he doesn't eat the seeds. Okay, there is a little seed in there. It's okay though. What do you think? Oh!
Tastes like anything.
Doesn't taste like anything. Well, why'd you spit it out?
Because it doesn't taste like anything.
Okay. Now I've got my piece of prickly pear.
There's a
I'm
little
going
piece
to-
of dirt in it so he can eat it.
Yeah, there's a little piece of dirt in there. Do you think dirt is delicious?
No.
Probably not.
I've had a little sand before.
Sand? All right, I'm gonna take a bite.
Sand tastes
Here it
like
goes. I am now eating a cactus.
Yummy.
It tastes a lot like
Watermelon.
watermelon and a little bit like kiwi. So, I'm gonna say that it's a little bit crunchy because there's seeds in it. But on my tongue, it tastes a little bit sweet, like watermelon. So who would think that a cactus tastes like a watermelon?
Me.
You? Now, it's interesting that these cactus would taste like watermelon. You know why, Johnny?
Why?
Well, how do you say watermelon in Spanish?
Watermelon. Watermelon.
No, do you know?
No.
Okay.
Sandia.
Sandia, right? And where is something that you know of that's called sandia?
Sandia Mountain.
The mountains. You see those mountains over there? Those are called the Sandia Mountains.
Now they
Or,
look quickly.
if we translate it to English, it's called
Sandia. The watermelon.
Watermelon Mountains. That's right. We can't talk about being in the desert in Albuquerque without talking about our wonderful Sandia Mountain. And when talking about our mountains, using our sense of sight can be amazing. Because when we're talking about their size, they're huge and gargantuan, right? But something interesting happens with the Sandia Mountains when the sun sets. They turn a glorious orange or sometimes even pink. And the reason that they're called the Sandia Mountains is because their color resembles watermelons. And all the black parts on the mountains kind of look like they're seeds, don't you think? So, if you ever decide you want to try prickly pear, you can try them, but ask your parents to go to the store and buy them. Don't just grab one and eat one yourself, because you could end up instead of using your sense of taste, you'll be using your sense of touch, and you won't like it because it'll be prickly. Ouch. Okay, let's go use some other senses. Ready? Go. So when I was little, I grew up here in the desert in Albuquerque, just like most of you are doing, right? But then when I got older and I went to college, I went to a state called Kentucky. And Kentucky, it's actually called the Bluegrass State. And they have lots of grass and rain, so it's green there. And somebody asked me when they found out that I was from New Mexico, said, "Do you guys really have tumbleweeds?" And I said, "Yeah, what's the big deal about tumbleweeds?" And they weren't even sure if they really existed, that maybe it was just something that they saw in movies. So I thought that was a little bit funny. So I thought, let's do a little bit talking about tumbleweeds. So if you're not really kind of tuned into your senses and thinking much about all the interesting ways that we can observe things, it would be very easy, I've done it myself, to think about a tumbleweed and go, there's nothing cool about a tumbleweed. But actually, when you start using, this is a good opportunity to talk some more about our sight and the ways that we can break down the way that we see things. Because actually, when you look pretty close at a tumbleweed, they're quite intricate and interesting. Let's take a look. Tumbleweeds can actually get pretty big. Let's see here. Hey, where'd you guys go? So they can get very big, and they also would be prickly, okay? Nobody wants to play with these things. And they get the name tumbleweed because especially here after the winter, when these have all died and the springtime comes and the wind starts to blow and it makes them tumble. Let's see if I can make it tumble. Ready? Let's go ahead and actually use a tumbleweed to talk about our sense of sight, okay? So when we're talking about things that we can see, there's many ways to break it down. One is size. Now, would you call the tumbleweed little? No, right? It's pretty big. So the size is big. And then another thing that we talk about when we're using our eyes to describe is shape. What shape would you call this? Well, it rolls, right? So it's kind of like a ball. So it's round and it's big. And then another thing that we use that can be really fun to describe with our eyes are parts. What kind of parts does this have? Let's take a closer look. It's very intricate. It actually has lots of different parts, right? So this is the root. Under here, it used to be underground, right? And all these different stems, that's what these parts, okay, so was the root. And the stems, it has lots of different stems, right? And they're thicker right here, and they get tinier and tinier. And this is where actually they would kind of flower sometimes, right? So we had root, stem, flower, if you want to call it that. Okay, enough of the tumbleweeds. So far we've talked about things that we could hear, things that we see, things that we feel, things that we taste, but we haven't really talked about or found anything that we can smell. Let's go see if we can do that.
The world keeps turning our way, and our way is on the road again.
So when we're talking about the desert, the first thing that pops to mind in the desert isn't usually flowers. But as you can see, I did just find lots of various different types of flowers, right? And they all have unique looks. And all throughout the year, we do have different unique flowers that grow in the desert. Now we're just starting spring now, so we're not seeing a lot. If you smell these flowers, it's not like a bouquet of roses, but they do have a fragrance to them, and it's a slight smell, okay, but it's kind of sweet and pleasant and nice. So there we go. We have now used all our senses in the desert, a brief stroll in the desert. Now, why don't you guys go out on a walk with your parents and collect things, find one thing for each sense that you found interesting. Either write it down or take pictures, and feel free to send us your thoughts. So again, go out there. We truly miss you guys. We truly think that you're wonderful. So go out there, use your senses, and realize how truly wonderful you guys are. Bye, until next time.